It's your board game dessert time, folks. It is time for another game pie. Mandi and I love to serve up a game pie in which we share a selection of games around a certain topic, usually uh, based on our good taste and whims, because we hate ranking things and we love baked goods. That said, this time we're doing something a little bit different because today's game pie is full of peeves. It's peeve pie, Mandi. Specifically, the game pie of the day is rulebook peeve pie. Mandi, what is a rulebook peeve? Maybe we should give a little more
Define
context
that.
to folks. Yeah, define what we're talking about here.
Well, I mean, I feel like, and you can add on to this definition, but things that, when going through a rule book, things that perhaps don't make sense to you or, can maybe make learning a game a little difficult because rule books are supposed to make it, easier to learn a game. And when it becomes frustrating or, difficult or challenging to learn the game because of the rule book, yeah, there are a few things that definitely kind of just really needle me in those rule books, and it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Just all those little, and we almost called it rulebook pet peeves, but
Right.
these are bigger than
Oh,
pet peeves. We're
absolutely.
really peeved about
We're
these.
peevy about these
We're
peeves.
super peevy about rulebooks. So anyway, with that fine introduction, Mandi, what's your first peeve pie slice?
Okay, the first rule I was gonna say the first PV pie slice for me. That sounds real bad. So we're
Yeah.
just gonna go with my first rule book peeve slice of pie is player count adjustments. And you're like, what does that really mean? How many times have you read the rule book and you're like, oh, okay, you're looking at it and it's telling you how to set it up, and it's usually basing it on like a 4-player, 3-player game. And they're like, but we're playing with two, right? So, okay, maybe they'll, yeah, okay, no, but it doesn't really say anything about it here. We'll just keep reading and setting it up, only to find out, oh no, 2 players are at the back of the book. Or it'll tell you, here, go to the back of the book. Why can't you just put it there? You could put it in a
Hmm.
different color. Just here's the player setup for 3 to 4 players. If you're playing 2-player, do this. Like, I don't understand why the need to send me now to the back of the book to then come back to that section of the book for the different player count. Just put it in the same
Right.
spot.
Read all of these rules and learn how to play the game,
Right.
and then
Go and
read all the ways that none of those apply separately. Yeah, that can be
exactly.
really disorienting.
It's frustrating to me, and I have to say have been some rule books who I've noticed have started doing that. If you're, adding the bits, like if you're doing, playing for these counts, it's going to be the same. If you're playing 2-player, whatever the case may be, make these adjustments. I do understand solo rules; it's a little different, and I'm not as peevy about those things, but a 2-player ones really gets my goat. Just put it in the same spot. Don't send me on a goose chase. I'm already playing a game. I don't want to play another game in the rule book. So poorly done player count adjustment. Just throwing it out
Fair enough. The first slice of peeve pie for me is format. Uh, is specifically, I do not care for the large square rule books. And even worse is if it is a large square
there.
fold out style rule book. I just really don't like them. I find them awkward. I find oftentimes they're not laid out in a way that makes a lot of sense in terms of how the graphic designer has to
Right.
fill the space with information, and they're just cumbersome to have at the table and constantly be flipping over and have this giant thing in front of you. I don't like large square rule books. Now, if you've got like small box games, like the little all
Sure.
play squares like that, I don't care. But when
Sure.
you have those big 12 by 12-inch boxes and an 11 and a half by 11 and a half inch
Yeah.
square rule book, it's too much. Just get rectangles. Embrace the rectangle,
I
please.
agree. I agree. That's a good one. Okay, and next one I know, a nice next slice of pie for me. I know that one of my gaming friends will relate to because generally we play games. She reads a lot of the rules. is putting rules in the example instead of putting it in the actual
Mhm.
rules.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's so bad.
You're reading it, you're like, "Yeah," and then they're like, this but I don't this doesn't make sense, I'm not super clear here," and you're trying to figure it out, you're on BGG, you're online, "I'm missing something, I can't figure it out," until you go, "Oh, well, let's take a look at the example, maybe we're just missing it." Oh, there's the rule in the example, which is not a mandatory thing for you to read, it's a suggested thing for you to read or to accompany the rules, but something that is important that you need to know should not be in the example. So that happens a lot. And I don't know if it's just something that just was forgotten or maybe they feel it would be better with the example. But if you're going to do that, then make reading the example mandatory. Please refer to this, but it should be in the actual rule set. So putting rules in the examples instead of laying them out in the actual rule set.
I think that's a great one to mention, Mandy. It is interesting the way that you phrased it, that the examples are optional or
Right.
suggested, like they're not mandatory reading. And I agree with you, but I wonder if everybody feels
Sure.
that way.
And
It'd be
you're absolutely
interesting to
right.
hear from folks if you're listening and have your input on that, because I can see it where
Sure.
maybe publishers are like, "Hey, you read the rule book. Like you got it. We're providing all this critical information
Mhm.
in the rule book for you to read." So maybe opinions and approaches on that differ.
That's actually a good point. I think for me, because a lot of examples are margined,
Yeah.
a
Yep.
lot of them are and when
They're
you look
set
at things
aside
that
in
are
a way. Yeah.
yeah, it almost sets it aside. Now, that's just a me interpretation, but you're absolutely right. That could be the thought behind it, and that's actually something that maybe we could, talk about further or someone can talk about in our forums later.
Yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that for sure.
Yeah.
And on that track of examples, the next slice I'm serving up, not enough examples.
Uh,
Examples are so important, and people learn and consume information differently. Everybody's
yes.
brain works differently. Mandy, I know you are
Yes. I have a
a
different brain.
big advocate, right? And I think it's interesting. A game like Root is often highlighted for they have different rule books
Right.
that present the rules in different styles. There are also a lot of like war game, hex and
Mhm.
counter style games that do this as well, where you have kind of two different styles of rules layout, which is an interesting approach. And I have found that sometimes there are games where they are describing a concept in the game and you're trying to visualize it, but you just can't quite get it. And
Right.
it doesn't quite make sense. And an example would be so helpful. An illustrated, rendered, whatever scenario example just makes a huge difference, especially in things like scoring. And a lot
Yes.
of rule books are really good about this, but showing an example of end game scoring of all these if then statements that you have to calculate, or if this is adjacent to that, then it scores this amount of points, and all that kind of stuff. Illustrations show, don't just tell in a rule book. It's a huge help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if they're well done, yeah, it's meant to supplement, right? Supplement the
Mhm.
rules. So absolutely. Good one. The next slice of pie for me is just one word. Rule books that are verbose. Just overly, just so much talking that could be done in maybe a sentence and it's a paragraph. Now, I do understand that some rule books are translated, and I understand that the translation
Yeah, good point. Okay.
potentially could change it. But the general, when I think somebody, and this could be just from people complaining from something else, it's just over explaining and then it becomes complicated in the fact that it leaves it very open to interpretation of things. There's like, is this what they mean? Or like they could have said this simpler. Like it just leaves it open for people being like, okay, but I think it means this, but they actually meant this. And they end up having to go online and do that whole chase again to see what they actually meant. So I think clear and concise is always the way to go. And I'm sure there are reasons behind it. But yeah, when it starts to get wordy, and especially me as a teacher, I play games with someone who's a writer, we're a little more critical about these sorts of things probably than most. But then we start going, okay, well, did they mean this because of the word they used here and the way they explained it when it could have just been said in like kind of one clear and concise sentence? So having a lot of that wordiness can definitely make things challenging in a rule book.
Absolutely. One of my old colleagues in advertising had or has a tattoo on her arm, and she's a writer and an editor, and her tattoo says omit needless words.
Yeah.
And that's just cemented in my brain, and I think it goes to exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
Alrighty. My next slice up about rulebook pet peeves are rulebooks that don't label and show the components in the components list, or
Yes.
worse yet, don't have a
Oh,
visual components
that's
list,
the worst.
right? It's fine if you have a game that has just one deck of cards. I don't
Right.
care, right? But when you have a game that has three different types of cards
Right.
and it says, oh, you have 16 goal cards and you have 16 public goal cards, and you're looking at two groups of 16 cards and you're like, wait, which one is which? I don't know. And they don't show the card back, or they don't
Right.
show an example of it, or tokens. You should have this many tokens, or if they don't, sometimes they don't even tell you how many tokens. So you're kind of trying to do this puzzle thing of, well,
Right.
which one looks like it could be prestige? I don't know. If you have a multitude of components and they're different from the same format, tokens, cards, you gotta show examples of them. Show the card back or show the card front that makes it visually distinguishable for the players to understand even just how to set up this
Right.
game. It's
Exactly.
critical.
Oh yeah, that I've come across that before, and it's just like, and I've sat there. We're all a group, kind of going, okay, they're saying the adventure cards, and you have a stack of like, 6 different cards. We're
Yep,
like, which ones are the adventure cards? None of them say
exactly. Oh
adventure.
gosh,
Uh,
drives me bonkers.
Make a guess. Exactly. So yeah, that's a big one as well. Visual, right? I need that. And my last slice of rulebook peeve pie. This one, I don't know what this one really gets me. Using male pronouns for all player reference. So, instead of saying the player
Ugh.
or they, which, encompasses everybody, you want to just say he. And I know there are some people that may not agree with this one, but for me, why exclude when you can include? Do you know what I mean? It's a very
Absolutely.
simple thing that we can do. And I feel like I'm gonna say it, it's a bit lazy to just kind of throw he in there.
Nowadays, yeah, especially nowadays, absolutely. No, I think it's so good that you highlighted this one. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I know that even, my game group, even the guys,
Yeah.
cisgender guys, well, they'll call that out. They'll be
Oh,
like, oh, I
yeah.
guess this game is just for us. Like, you girls can't play. I guess Susan and Melissa are not going to play, that kind of thing. So it's not just for women, and it's not
No.
just it's just a silly thing that you don't need to do anymore. And I'm really glad that's not a
No,
that's not a small deal. That's
no.
a big
It
peeve.
it really
That's a
is.
massive peeve.
And I love when we read rule books too. We'll get to it like anybody in my game group. Doesn't matter who's reading the rules. They'll be like, and then and they'll kind of stop. They do the
Right.
thing because
With
then
their
we all
self-editing, yeah.
know that it says he, and they're like, seriously,
Mhm.
like, yeah. So just using pronouns that includes everybody, and it's very easy. So that's one I think we can do better on
That
for
that
sure.
was the ultimate one. I can't top that, but
It's a big
that
one.
good call out. And finally, even though we're not competing in this,
No.
another big one for me, but not as Mandy, that was a great call out, is when rule books use game theme in to teach the game,
Oh,
or basic terminology that makes it harder to learn the game. I don't care if you call victory points prestige points,
sure.
victory points, food points, whatever, that's fine. But the games that pop to mind that are some of the worst offenders
Yes.
are trick taking
Oh,
games.
right.
A lot of trick taking is an odd type of game to teach to somebody that didn't just kind of grow up with it. There
Exactly.
are a lot of weird idiosyncrasies, even for experienced game players to pick up on. And there's kind of this beautiful surge of interesting trick taking games coming out right now, which is really great from a player perspective. But I have found, as I'm going to say, a very experienced trick taker. Like, I
Yeah.
have played trick taking games, bridge and spades and hearts and pinochle, since I was a child.
Right.
So I know trick taking basics. But when it's hard for me to understand what the game is saying, the rule book is saying you should do, because it's like, oh, when you turn the dial on the happiness measure and your satisfaction meter is lower than the next player's purple vendetta count,
Right.
then you win the trick, or then you triumph and take all of the fruit nuts. I'm just like, wait, what did you just tell me? Who? Wait, did we? What? And I've
Yeah.
especially noticed that in trick taking games. So I've seen it in other games. And I say that, and Mandy, you and I are kind of similar. We're
Sure.
very Eurocentric players.
Yeah.
We don't, theme is not always the central point for us in
Right.
a lot of board game experiences. So, grain of salt that. But look, I'm all for theme and I'm all for rule books incorporating or feeling thematic.
Sure.
But a rule book should teach you how to play the game. And when your theme impedes that teaching, maybe find a different way to
Right.
incorporate theme elsewhere.
Oh, this is a strong one. This is a strong one. There's a couple games that come to mind that we've played where it's something I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, I need a reference book to understand the theme that's explaining
Exactly.
the game." And I'm like, "Yeah, now I'm like, this is too much. This is too much for me. I'm done."
Right. It's like when you have a hand of cards, but the theme says you have your antiquities collection,
Sure.
right? Just
Just say hand
just
card.
it's a hand of cards. Just say your hand. Like don't save the
Immerse
antiquities collection for later.
exactly. Immerse us in the game like as we're playing, but the rules clear. Remember? Clear,
Exactly.
concise, those little C's. Stick with that and you'll be good. That was a strong one. I like that one.
I will now jump in and say, with respect, it is hard to write rule
Oh,
books. And just to what we were saying
100%.
earlier, everybody learns differently. So
Absolutely.
something that works for you, Mandy, may not work for me, or vice versa. Or what works for us may not work for somebody out there in the world. And I get that. So I don't want to,
Absolutely.
I don't want to minimize. I know that conscientious choices are being made and how this information is presented. And somebody, it's like really important for them to convey their theme and that they're very proud of that work. These are just our personal opinions
Absolutely.
on things that we noticed. Mad respect to everybody out there who has to write rule books because I do appreciate it is hard.
Oh, it's so hard. And there are great rule books. There are some that are fantastic, but overall you're absolutely right. Much like, creating games is difficult. And, sometimes it needs some tweaking to get it right, right? So and there are so many different learners as you were saying. So yes, these are just things that are our preferences or things we've noticed. But yes, respect to people who do write it because it can be challenging.
Mandy, this game pie came from us talking about actually game crimes. We wanted to serve up a
Yeah.
game crime pie, but we had so many game crimes that were rule book specific that we realized, oh, let's just do a rule book peeve
Yeah,
pie instead.
exactly.
But I think game crime, like crimes that games commit that as a product, as an experience that we
Right.
think we don't enjoy, that's still on our docket to do. And I have no doubt that y'all out there listening and watching have your rule book peeves as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So we want to hear, first of all, if you have game crimes
Yes.
that, things that games will do that you wish they didn't, would love to have those suggestions. Maybe we'll incorporate them into the next episode. And if you have rulebook peeves, oh my gosh, lay them on us. I want to hear them all.
Oh yeah,
Bring it.
absolutely.
You can always email us those peeve suggestions at saltandsassgames@gmail.com. Or you can comment on our Board Game Geek Guild. That's boardgamegeek.com, guild number 4131, and drop your comments in there. I know y'all have great comments on this one. So really looking forward to hearing those. You can also hit us up on in the broader World Wide Web. Right,
Yes.
man?
So many socials. You might be watching us here on YouTube or Twitch, and you can find us at Salt and Sass Games. We are also on Twitter. That's right, I said Twitter at Salt and Sass Games. That's Salt and Sass Games. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, all the things at 613 Mandy. That's Mandy with an I. How about you, Suzanne?
And you can find me on those platforms as well. But I am, of course, 425 Suzanne. All right. Until next episode, I hope that you don't encounter a lot of game crimes, and I hope that all of your rule books are peeve free.
Yes.
But until then, please, have fun, enjoy your new year, stay hydrated, and of course, play a ton of games. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. This episode was sponsored by Druid City Games, where player experience comes first. Check out all of their great games at druidcitygames.com.